Good evening and welcome to Ghana Tonight. We're coming to you live from our news hub here at Desawe in Kanda, Accra. We're streaming live on Facebook at TV3 Ghana and also on DSTV channel 279. We're also live around the world on 3news.com. Tonight, in the face of the High Court's description of Anas's style of journalism as investigative terrorism, we find out how that affects the practice of journalism, especially undercover journalism in the country. We're also live in Ashaiman this evening, where one of the residents brutalized by the military has reportedly passed on. We have an extended conversation on that matter. Still ahead tonight, calls for Gets Fund to be uncapped hits Parliament. Tonight we have a conversation with the advocates. You've got to stay with us for your most authoritative current affairs and news analysis show. My name is Kwesi Asare, sitting in for your regular host, Alfred Ocansey. Let's get interactive on social media. Follow us on our handle on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with the hashtag Ghana Tonight. Let's now settle for Ghana Brief. Residents of Ashaiman want the military head to sanction the swoop in the community, leading to brutalities and the death of a victim dismissed. They made the demand when the Defence and Interior Committee of Parliament and the Military High Command visited the community.
We are saying that all properties damaged, we've collated most of the information. We want those properties restored to their status before the damage. Two should be dismissed immediately.
A former energy minister and the current deputy minister for energy faced off in a fierce debate over the gold for oil deal by government. At the penultimate debate on the State of the Nation address, the deputy minority leader insisted that the program cannot account for the current drop in fuel prices.
They have consistently fought for this policy to fail. Because if you listen to the commentary from our friends on the other side, on social media, on mainstream media, their intent is for Ghanaians not to benefit from low pricing of petroleum products. That gold for oil policy is rather what has come in to help address the rampant increases in the foreign exchange so that the Ghanaian consumer can have the benefit of the pricing or low commodity prices at the pump.
The National Union of Ghana Students has petitioned Parliament to, as a matter of urgency, uncap the Ghana Education Trust Fund, GET Fund. According to the students' body, capping of the GET Fund has since 2019 deprived the education sector of more than 3.7 billion cedis worth of funding.
Our concerns primarily stems out of the declining funding for education, which emanates from GET Fund. In 2017, this House enacted Act 947. Which has become more of an enemy to the progress of students. Out of 4.6 billion that is supposed to be accrued to GET Fund, only 1.8 billion, representing 39%, reject the 2023 proposed formula for disbursing GET Fund, move strictly to, in collaboration with the Finance Committee, initiate steps to immediately uncap GET Fund.
Individual bondholders have urged the Finance Ministry to act in a manner that would engender investor confidence in the Ghanaian economy. The group wants government to be prompt with the payment of coupons that matured as far back as February. Convener of the group, Senyor Hossi, wants government to be up and doing.
We believe that it would have been appropriate for the ministry to also advise a date for notifying when the rest of the payments will be made, and or exact schedule of payments if we were ready. If we're not ready, I think the minimum that could have been done was just to communicate clearly the government intends to advise a schedule by a given day. We still believe that it's not too late for the ministry to rectify that omission, and we are looking forward to the ministry coming back to us on that matter within the coming week.
Preparations are underway at the State House as it gets ready to host the final funeral rites of Christian Achu on Friday, March 17. The former Black Stars winger died in February after being trapped in a rubble for several days following a massive earthquake in Turkey. As a large gathering is expected to mourn the loss of the beloved footballer, the State House has been prepared to accommodate the mourners. Gone by was Ghana Brief. If you just joined us, this is Ghana Tonight, live from our studios here at Desawe in Kanda, Accra. We're streaming live on Facebook. We're also live on your DSTV channel 279. Let's know what you make of our major story tonight. We'll begin with development in Ashaiman, where one of the victims of the military brutality is reported dead. The Parliamentary Committee on Defense and Interior was in the area. But first, let's take a look at excerpts of the documentary Ashaiman Under Siege, which highlights the military brutalities a few days ago and the general life in the area. Well, this documentary was put together by my colleague Godwin Asidiba.
Whilst beating us, they left us rolling on the mud, drinking the dirty water in the gutters, and doing all unnecessary things, stepping on us like we're not human beings.
As they recount what happened the very tragic day, they say they are ready to face the military head-to-head if they storm the area to conduct such a terror exercise again. They have vowed not to take things lightly.
If this thing is going to continue, 70 million, will not take it easy with them. Because I don't know anything. I don't know what is my crime. You want to force me to say what I don't know.
They also blamed some of the military personnel for their missing monies.
People lost their money. People lost their capital. This was one of their victims.
Ashaiman is a bustling town at night. It's 11 p.m. and this is the hour that a number of traders here are able to cash out a lot. But criminals also take the opportunity to attack them and take their monies away from them when they are done with their businesses. Not only that, if you're walking around this particular area at night and you do not take care with your valuables, it can be snatched away from you.
People are scared of Ashaiman because some people in Ashaiman don't make Ashaiman good, and they are spoiling the name of Ashaiman. Sometimes when the people close and they are going home, some of them are from work, they carry their bags on. You see the boys opening their bag. So immediately we see the boys opening their bag, we will shout, "Hey, my bag no, mo." Some of them will run away, some of them they will catch them and will beat them severely. So that is what is going on the street of Ashaiman nowadays. So Friday, Saturday, when the market is busy, then they are also in it doing their own thing.
It's scary because we see them doing the certain things. People attacking people on the street, taking their phones. They call something like yam. They will use a clean phone to lure you. When you are able to buy it, then they give you that stone. It's a bad practice, and it's scarce. At times we'll be there, you see somebody on the main street snatching people's bags. All the same, it's not a good thing. So it's scarce. It's scarce some of us who are doing business here. Once they don't have job, they're actually stronger for what they eat. So they will go in for something cheaper. When somebody influences, let's do this and we'll get our daily bread. That person can influence the person easily and he will fall into it.
There was one time a particular guy attacked one of my brother's apprentices. He was riding Okada in the night and he collected Okada. So he came to tell me around 9 p.m. I went to him to the 18 inside. So I asked some of the people, so I said, "Oh, what are you looking for?" I said, "Someone attacked my brother's, how do you call it? My brother's apprentice."
I've collected his motor, so don't worry, we know him. Don't worry, we know him, we'll show him. And they showed me the person. It was late in the night. And one guy was putting his hand inside my bag. But I also live in Ashama, so I know all these things. I just turned and hold this. What do you want in my bag? He was trying to put pressure. I also pushed the pressure, then he realized that no, this guy is a new guy here, but it's not that easy to get.
Well, so that documentary just gave you a sense of the life in Ashaiman after that military brutality that happened a couple of days ago. Earlier today, the Defense Minister, Dominic Nitiwul, visited the family of the slain soldier and promised to put an end to such killings in the country.
First time that you have had issues with the Ghana Armed Forces. It tells me that there is a fundamental problem that we need to resolve. So, Mr. Chairman, whatever you are doing, please give me recommendations that the Ministry of Defense will use to ensure that the two communities, the military community and the Ashama community, can find a way of living in peace forever and ever.
Now, some of the residents who had marched up also demanded the sack of the military heads who sanctioned the swoop in the community, leading to the brutalities and the death of one of their own.
Tired of military brutalization. We are saying that all properties damaged, we've collated most of the information. We want those properties restored to their status before the damage. 2, adequate compensation for the victims. 3, all the military high command that gave the unlawful order should be dismissed immediately.
Meanwhile, responding to their demands, the Parliamentary Committee on Defense promised to probe further and profile recommendations.
The people, or we know the perpetrators, and we all keep quiet. If we do that, innocent people, like what has happened to you last week, will happen. So I'm pleading that next time we don't shield anybody. To delve into this matter and come out with the truth.
All right, so we're going to stay a while longer on this subject. It's a developing story. Let's go live on Zoom to speak to Francis Xavier Kojo Sosu, who is the Member of Parliament for Medina and also a private legal practitioner. He joins us live on Zoom. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. The Defense Ministry has admitted that there were excesses in the Ashaiman invasion. Now, based on this admission, what legal remedies can the victims of this brutality take?
It's such a shame that the Ghana Armed Forces have come to admit excesses after they have done everything in the public space to justify their unlawful invasion of ordinary citizens. There are several remedies available, which include bringing an action in court for compensation for the violations meted out to the individual citizens. It depends on what level of violation a person suffered and what kinds of course of action could be available. Others were wrongfully arrested. Some were wrongfully detained. There could be forced imprisonment. There could be assault and battery. And obviously, there could also be a human rights action for compensation under the 1992 Constitution.
Right, and to the extent that this was a sanctioned operation by the military high command, would you agree with calls to have the leadership of the military answer questions?
Absolutely. I mean, the military would have to understand that in recent times, their actions have actually been an affront to our democracy. When you look at the 1992 Constitution, the language of the Constitution is very clear when it comes to the duty and mandate of military officers. For example, you look at Article 210 of the Constitution, particularly Article 210(1). It says, for the purposes of our viewers, let me read. It says that there shall be the armed forces of Ghana, which shall consist of the Army, the Navy, the Air Forces, and other services for which provision is made by Parliament. And 2, it says that no person shall raise an armed force except by or under the authority of an act of Parliament. And then the 3, which is the most critical one, says that the armed forces shall, and that is mandatory, says that the armed forces shall be equipped and maintained to perform their role of defense of Ghana, as well as such other functions for the development of Ghana, as the president may deem, or as the president may determine. Now, the core duty of the Ghana Armed Forces is defense of Ghana. It's not day-by-day law enforcement. And so the use of military in law enforcement is completely, it's out of place, completely. It has no space in any democratic dispensation. It's not sanctioned by the Constitution of Ghana, and it violates multiple, rules, right from the international level to regional level to Ghana level, and it violates the 1992 Constitution. So to the extent that they have come to admit their excesses, I would have been expecting that to be more proactive, they will by now be determining the level of compensation they will pay these victims. One of the things I have really worried about in this country is the fact that the state thinks that it can violate any individual at any time. And when it comes to compensate those individuals, then it becomes a very horrendous duty to the individual. So what does that mean? It means that if you have been violated and you don't even have money to go for a lawyer or to go to court, then you don't get any remedy. So clearly the state is meting out injustice and perpetrating injustice against its citizens. And I think that must change, particularly when the state comes to the realization that what it did or its action were really uncalled for, as it is in this case.
Only today, we're learning that one of the victims of the brutalities unfortunately passed on. Can the military be held to account if a causal link is established between the death and the brutalities?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, they can hold the military accountable for this life. I mean, for now, we don't have the full facts, and sometimes it's important that you will be able to establish the causal link between the death and the brutality. If there is enough medical evidence that shows that the death was eventually as a result of the brutality meted out to this young man, obviously the family can maintain an action against the military. But I don't think that the military would have to wait until people start bringing an action. The military must be more responsive. They must be more responsible. They must take, they must begin to take steps to do something about the situation even before individuals start, bringing an action. And I believe that this is a very, very good case where the Parliament of Ghana and the Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament of Ghana would have to call the military high ranks to come to Parliament to account for all the individuals that were violated. And if possible, there must be a parliamentary resolution to compel the military, and for that matter, the government of Ghana, to pay compensation for all these victims.
Honorable Xavier Sasu, some are already beginning to call for the establishment of a commission of inquiry to be set up to investigate this incident. This is not the first time we will see a commission of inquiry set up for this purpose. Will a commission of inquiry help deliver the justice, the kind of justice that the people and the deceased family indeed deserve?
Honestly, I don't see the need for a commission of inquiry into this matter. I think that we must show leadership and we must be more proactive. Most often than not, these commissions of inquiries, what becomes of their report? I was always working by election violence. What became of the report of the commission of inquiry? The Attorney General and the government of Ghana did a government white paper and decided to accept which recommendation they want to accept and reject those that they want to reject. So how does that serve the interest of justice of the people who have been violated? We have video evidence available that suggests that the military went overboard with their action. And then you have evidence suggesting that the people that have been arrested by the police in connection of the murder of the young of the young military officer have nothing to do with all the people they round up and beat and subjected to all forms of dehumanizing and cruel treatment. And the military high ranks have come out to admit that there were excesses. Why would you need a commission of inquiry? Why would you want to waste the taxpayers' money? Why can't the military high command, put up a notice for all persons who were violated or who were victims to come and write their names or take their details? And why can't the military high command itself set a committee that can look at some compensation or reasonable compensation to these victims? Why must we set a new commission of inquiry to investigate the obvious?
Finally, sir, you have spoken quite extensively about compensation in this matter, but you're on a course to sponsor a private member's bill to streamline our compensation regime. How's that going, and what is the end game?
Let me say that has it's just still in its very, very infant stage, because once you introduce the bill to Parliament, what it does is that it first goes, once Speaker admits it, it goes to the Legislative Drafting Department. That will prepare an initial legal opinion. And based on their legal opinion, you then will guide how the draft will eventually come, because we are guided by Article 108, where private members are not allowed to introduce bills that may have financial implications. So obviously, if this bill is going to be based on or will be funded by consolidated fund or from government, obviously it most likely will be caught up by Article 108. So it is still at its, infantil stage, where I'm doing various stakeholder consultations and possibly to get even the Attorney General to adopt this bill and introduce it in the name of the government. And this is so crucial because it is unacceptable that the state, with all its facilities and with its power, can choose to violate individual citizens. And having violated them and having admitted that it is state action that violated those individual citizens, we then place a very huge burden on that individual to go look for a lawyer at his cost, to now originate an action in court. An action sometimes that may take between 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or sometimes it takes forever. And when it even comes to the court determining the quantum of compensation, it becomes a problem. Because you will remember that when I worked on Francis Ejari's case for somebody who had been on remand for more than 14 years, you have the person being compensated with a little over 200,000 Ghana cedis. You remember the case of Erika Santi, who was convicted and was in Nissan prison for more than 15 years, or almost 15 years. When he was released and we filed for compensation, the lump sum that was awarded to him by the Supreme Court was about 40,000 cedis. So clearly, there is no even consistency in even the compensation regime. You remember your own colleague, Felix Nyaba. I remember that when he was put in prison and, he was released after just 3 months. But that was definitely a violation. But, based on some other reasoning by the court, compensation was not assessed for him. So it tells you that we have a regime currently where the state is free to violate people. When it comes to the state paying for that violation, then the state dilly-dallies. And that is the reason why it's so important that all stakeholders in the field of justice and stakeholders who are seeking for substantial justice for every Ghanaian must stand up together to demand that this provision of our constitution that provides that where a person is wrongfully arrested or incarcerated, the person will have a right to compensation from the person or the institution or the individual that wrongfully dealt with him. Those provisions must be given effect to by legislation, so we will have clarity as to what kind of compensation goes to people when they are violated in matters like this.
Francis Xavier Kojo-Sosu is a member of parliament from Medina and a private legal practitioner. He joined us live on Zoom. A reminder, you're still watching Ghana Tonight, live from our studios here at Desawe in Kanda, Accra. We're going to go for a quick break. When we return, we've got more stories.
Win your share of over 3 million Ghana cedis worth of prizes whenever you buy a bottle of Guinness, Star, or Origin. Dial *1000# to submit the code under the crown, and you can win cash, free airtime, and drinks. So, look sharp. This advert is FDA approved. Drink responsibly, not for sale to persons under the age of 18 years. Not recommended for pregnant women.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to demonstrate to you the superior properties of Flamingo paint. As compared to other paint brands on the market, we take equal quantities of Flamingo paint and this ordinary paint. We then dilute them with water. And now, let the test begin. The gentleman on the left is going to apply the ordinary paint, and the gentleman on my right will use the Flamingo superior paint. As you can clearly see, Flamingo has the obvious better hiding. Furthermore, Flamingo has painted a much larger area. You know, one bucket of Flamingo paint is equal to several buckets of any other paint brand on the market. Flamingo paint is made with superior formulation to give superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage. Flamingo paint, simply superior.
Everybody knows Acrobato. And if you know Acrobato, it means you know M-Punch Homeopathy Clinic. M-Punch Homeopathy Clinic is my pillar. Let's hear what others are saying about M-Punch Homeopathy Clinic. Who will be careful M-Punch one?
Chese na me ankasa me period na se problems wom tina ma wo ho idea ma me papa chese na nyana sam ketewa na mkwan point no mhwe me modam no mhwe bibia na so mo meduro me fae no ene ma won kra mienu foforo kwa na mkwan mu a eba
head everything yourself
me ma me no adwodwo eda ho a wontumi nante ene ne ko end point o mama nura ene ne ho idea watimi asori anante.
That's end point for you. Of Acrobato. Hello. Hey, ohwehwe what che. Okay. E free bra wo di end point wa dance. Ah me call you no. Me do so se ma na enkoyie en person na ma yemre nyina na ma gina sebema na me no be fie for there e ho na nyina jaresa. You heard everything. I have secret. M-Punch is my secret. M-Punch Homeopathy Clinic. I'm free.
It's Anthony Movement! Prosper! What is this battle?
I started Ghana's strongest journey since 2019.
With 120 kg. And he has it!
It has not been an easy journey. Through hard work, strength, and determination. I tried 3 times before I finally won.
Ghana's strongest man, Prosper Dakora Debi!
Life has been amazing ever since. I drove away a car. I don't intend giving up my title. I believe that I am the strongest man in Ghana.
Do you think you are the next Ghana strongest? Then join the audition screenings on the 17th of March in Kumasi, Frames Complex, Takrady, 19th of March at the Takrady Shopping Mall, on the 21st of March, Ho Poly Park, and finally in Accra on the 25th of March at the TV3 premises. Come and compete to be titled as the strongest man in Ghana.
Some things are for rare men only. I'm dead.
Ghana Strongest, the power to do.
It's about to get more sporty with a touch of super entertainment with your favorite stars.
Sometimes we play the Twitinga, the Chaskele, the football.
Who should I take? Tony Cruz?
Cruz.
Why?
While keeping you up to date with every trending issue in your world of sports on Warmer Plus.
But in comes Thomas Tuchel and everything changes. And when he said he wanted to be better than me, I was happy.
Let's keep it more sporty and super entertaining.
Warm Up Plus now shows on Saturdays at 11 a.m. on TV3.
Brought to you by Betway.
Right, a reminder you're still watching Ghana Tonight live from our studios here at Desawe in Kanda. We're streaming live on Facebook. We're also live on your DSTV channel 279. Now, the National Union of Ghana Students has petitioned Parliament to, as a matter of urgency, uncap the Ghana Education Trust Fund. That's the GET Fund I'm sure you know about. Now, according to the students' body, the capping of GET Fund has since 2019 deprived the education sector of more than 3.7 billion cedi worth of funding. We're going to explore this matter into further detail. Joining me in the studio is the president of the National Union of Ghana Students, NUGS. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. Dennis Apia Labi Amfofo, who's the president of the Ghana Union of Students. So, Dennis, good to have you on Ghana Tonight. And right, I saw you as part of a demonstration to Parliament. Right. What's your main difficulty with this law on capping GET Fund?
Thank you very much, PK. A very good evening to your viewers and the entire student front of this country. I think that our concern primarily stems out of the fact that there is a consistent low decline in investment in education on two fronts, both the discretionary funding and the statutory funding seem to be declining. So at the end of the day, the statutory funding, which is probably the hope of Ghanaian students or the educational sector that would ensure that funding of education is properly situated or rightly put, is also declining. How and why is it declining? It's declining as a result of a deliberate decision by certain quarters. That is why we believe that by same decision of the same quarters, the harm can be undone. What harm are we talking about? Far back in 2017, Act 947, the Earmarking and Capping Act, was enacted. GET Fund was placed as one of these funds to be capped. What that means is that, in literal terms, whatever amount you pay as GET Fund levy, the Finance Ministry has a discretion to limit the flow of funds into the fund, 25% originally. That was the capping level. What that meant is that in 2019, I usually like to do the facts. In 2019, out of 1.8 billion that was accrued to GET Fund or accrued out of the GET Fund levy, only 1.2 billion was allocated, representing 66%. In 2020,
so those are remaining 6 million.
No, then it means that it's a 600 million
right.
remaining that was diverted into other funds. In 2020, out of a 2 billion that was accrued from the GET Fund levy, only 1.2 billion was allocated, representing 60 billion. In 2021, out of 2.3 billion that was accrued, only 1.4 billion was allocated, representing 60%.
Right.
Fast forward in 2022, 81% was allocated. That is 3.2 billion accrued, 2.6 billion allocated. But then you think that it is 81%, so it was improving. Unfortunately, no. That same year, the figure was revised downwards to 56%. And it brought us to 1.8 billion again.
Out of a total of what?
Out of a total of 3.2 billion. So then you move to 2023, where it gets worse. How worse does it get? Out of a 4.6 billion that is accrued, that is going to be accrued out of the levies, only 1.8 billion is going to be allocated to education. So let me put things into perspective. When the GET Fund Act was enacted, the students of this country were engaged. All stakeholders were engaged. The pivotal concern that got the students of this country supporting the GET Fund levy upon its enactment was that it is going to be used to fund education. We all agree that, in all fairness, you cannot have quality and accessible education without funding. So then the people of this country subscribed or gave themselves to an act that levies them 2.5% on all commodities, in the spirit that this money is going to be used to fund the future of young people in this country. And this
ostensibly.
Clearly. This is the crux of the matter. But then we are at this point where funds are diverted out of it. But it has parliamentary backing in the form of Act 947. What is the impact? Now let me bring it down so that we all understand it. The impact is ravaging, is direct, and it is straight to the educational sector. The Ministry of Education is struggling with funding, Get Fund is struggling with funding, the schools are struggling with funding, and the students are struggling with funding. How so? Now let me take the issue of infrastructure deficit. One of the core mandates of Get Fund levy or Get Fund is to support in infrastructure provision in our schools, from the basic level to the secondary level to the tertiary level. For now, the Ghana Education Act puts the basic level under the MMDCs, but then Get Fund still has a responsibility to support. Now, you look into our secondary schools, and a lot of the infrastructure you see funded by Get Fund. But since 2017, Get Fund is unable to do more of these things. Now you get to our universities. That is where you feel the heat even the more. Now there is a reason why school fees seem to be on an upward trend. And then students are complaining about a rise in school fees. Do you know why? It is because students are funding the construction of lecture theatres and accommodation facilities. Funds which are supposed to move from Get Fund to support our tertiary institutions are not moving. Why? Because it's been capped.
Dennis, hold on for me. Let me go live on Zoom now to engage with Kofi Asare. He's the Executive Director of EduWatch. So, Mr. Kofi Asare, thank you very much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. So, you together with Nukes and backed on this demonstration, and you're essentially asking Parliament to do two things. To first of all reject the 2023 proposed formula for distributing the Get Fund, and also to, in collaboration with the Finance Committee, initiate steps to immediately uncap the Get Fund. Now, as Dennis has rightly said, this is not only something that's been done based on the discretion of the finance minister, it is also backed by Parliament. Now, how easy is this going to be to uncap this Get Fund?
Good evening to your cherished audience. Good evening to Dennis and team. The options available to us when it comes to education financing have never been easy options, and so we don't expect any of the actions to be taken to be easy at all. But our conviction is that, yes, this is a self-inflicted injury. Parliament themselves, in their wisdom, passed the earmarked funds alignment and capping law, knowing very well that it was going to lead to a decline in the financing of education and other earmarked funds that were capped. And they went ahead and passed the law. The same Parliament sat there at the dawn of 21st December last year, where the Minister of Finance moved the motion and then had it passed for the second time, which meant that there was a double capping just about 3 months ago in the same house. And so I think that given this situation, the right forum to go for redress is the very forum that empowered the Minister of Finance to mismanage Get Fund levy accruals. And I call it mismanagement because, let me give you an example of one of the implications of the capping. As a result of the capping, the Minister of Finance advised Get Fund to go for a loan to finance its infrastructure projects, especially those under the Free Senior High School, because inflows were declining as a result of the capping. So you cap Get Fund, and then when inflows are reducing, you ask them to go for a loan using a percentage of the remaining uncapped amount as a collateral, and they obtain a loan, a syndicated loan of up to about 13%, now converted into a bond program, which is called the Dutch bond, which is also without any immediate future because of the attitude of investors toward bonds in Ghana now. And so the best forum, I believe, that redress be sought is Parliament, because they gave the Minister of Finance the power to mismanage Get Fund levy accruals.
Now, so you've talked about the difficulties and the current challenges that we're faced as a country with this capping of the Get Fund. Some have said also, and I've heard the opposition argue in times past, that what we've done also is to borrow against the Get Fund proceeds. Now, if this is not stopped, what will be the likely implications moving forward?
If this does not stop, between 2017 and now, about 3.7 billion cedis have been diverted by the Minister of Finance to other sectors from Get Fund levy. That amount of money is more than how much the Ministry of Education required to eliminate all 5,400 schools under trees by 2020. And so what it means is that if this does not stop, one, the 5,400 schools under trees will never be eliminated because there won't be any 3.6 billion available to construct schools in place of such schools taking place under trees and sheds and dilapidated structures. Two, if this does not stop, it will get to the point where the cost of financing education infrastructure will continue to increase. Increase not because building materials or the cost of construction is increasing because of the rising inflation, but increasing because the cost of securing loans, the cost of securing loans to finance this project is higher. The third is that if this does not change, we will never see an end to the 2.3 million children in our public basic schools who do not have access to school desks. If you look at the trend, by 2017, 30% of students in public basic schools did not have access to desks per a government-owned desk ratio of 2:1. As we speak, that percentage of students without desks has increased to 40%. So if this does not change, given population increase, given efforts by all stakeholders to ensure that the 1 million children who are out of school enroll, what will happen is that our children will not get adequate furniture, both soft furniture, desks, and then also hard furniture being school infrastructure. And finally, if this does not change, the 1 million children who are out of school, according to the Ghana Statistical Services Population Census report, who can never go to school because we need about 2,000 schools, public basic schools, to accommodate the 1 million children who are out of school. And so if fewer and fewer resources are being made available to education by the day because of the finance minister's appetite in diverting education resources to other sources, then we will continue to count more and more and more children out of school simply because there will be fewer funds to construct schools in underserved communities. Let me conclude by saying that in the past 5 years, the last time we reviewed the performance of government in the basic education sector, we discovered that government is building an average of 0.8 public basic schools per year per district. You know what that means? It means that we are not even building one public basic school per year per district. We're not even building one. And if you have this level of achievement, and you just allow the finance minister to cap Get Fund and continue to take up to about 80% away, as we see happening under the new capping, then obviously we are not going to meet our key educational objectives under the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. And so we shouldn't allow this to happen. And I believe that Parliament will reassess the situation. And I'm happy that, as Dennis will confirm, I'm happy that the chairman of the committee himself and the ranking member have already sponsored a private members bill, which is not at the finance committee level. It's been there for a long time. I don't know why it's kept so long, because the finance minister went to Parliament on December 20th, gazetted a bill, an amendment bill, and then within 24 hours, it went through second and third reading. And
I was just going to go there for the final question. Of course, you started touching on it. I was going to ask you about the views of the Select Committee on Education, but just hold on for me there. Let's hear from the chairman of the Education Committee of Parliament, Kwabena Amankwa Isiama. While receiving the petition, he said the capping of the Get Fund will be a threat to the future of Ghana's education. He emphasized the need to invest more funds into the sector to develop students.
Get Fund is the only dedicated fund that has been earmarked for the development of education in our country. Capping it to the extent of giving it about 17.5% in recent act, I think it's not the right thing. Education is expensive, very, very expensive. But if you try vices and ignorance of the youth, in later years it will cost you harmfully and more than if you had used the money to educate your youth.
So quite clearly, Mr. Kofi Asare, it appears that you've got the backing of the Select Committee on Education.
Well, we appear to have the backing. We will, but as I said, we are treading cautiously. We are being cautiously optimistic in the sense that the same Select Committee, or the last time I checked the order paper, the proceedings in the vote of proceedings in the House on 21st December, that's last year, the last day in Parliament. Almost all the members of the Education Committee were in Parliament, and they were in Parliament when the Minister of Finance was there to move the motion for the adoption of an amendment of the capping to even make it more pernicious by reducing the amount from 25% to 17%. So all the members were there, and they supported it, because if Parliament did not support it, the Finance Minister couldn't have gotten the amendment done.
Right.
So
Kofi Asare.
yes, we are hearing their assurances, but we are cautiously optimistic about that. We want them to prove us wrong, that they have genuinely, realized that they've done something wrong and that they are ready to right it. So we'll continue to support that.
I've got to say a big thank you to you. Kofi Asare is Executive Director for EduWatch. He joined us on Zoom to also share his perspectives on this very important issue. Let me get back in studio. Dennis is still here with me. Dennis is with the National Union of Ghana Students. I need to ask you before we wrap up this conversation what exactly your interest is as NUGS. What do you seek to achieve?
Okay, so at the National Union of Ghana Students, one, you have huge concerns of non-payment of student loans, which is also suffering as a result of funds not moving from Get Fund to student loan. So you have a no guarantor policy that has been launched. You have students who are much more not interested in student loan. Student loan is now targeting to service 70,000 students, but it is impossible to achieve these figures if you don't have funds moving from Get Fund. If you don't have funds moving from Get Fund, you continue to suffer the infrastructure deficit or the accommodation crisis that universities like the University of Ghana go through every single year. So the impact of this is very direct on students in their everyday life. And that is where we have a worry. Kofi mentioned a couple of the issues at the basic level and the secondary school level. He mentioned to you some of the impact it has on even DEX. And that is where we have a problem. So our interest is that the students of this country must be prioritized. Education of this country must be prioritized. How do we prioritize them? First of all, the Education Select Committee must reject in absolute terms the formula that has been presented this year. Secondly, the entirety of Parliament must consider this as an emergency. They must consider this as a threat to education in this country, as a threat to funding education, because you cannot purport to want to fund education or grow education without the right investment. It affects the equitable distribution of education. How do we get this done? The Finance Committee of Parliament must, in the name of God and for the interest of all of us, quickly look at the private members bill presented by the Select Committee on Education, move their recommendations quickly, because from 29th of November that the private members bill was put to Parliament, to date is still at the Finance Committee. Then it causes a lot of worry, because the amendment that was moved by the Finance Minister went through, and on the 21st of December, just like Kofi mentioned, 4 a.m. that bill was passed to further cap Get Fund and further deprive students and education of this country from funding. But then it's a bit worrying that the same persons in Parliament, same people in power, would take the microphone, take the opportunity and say that they are concerned about education. That can't be true.
Dennis,
you cannot seek to say that you are concerned about education and divert funds from education into other areas.
Dennis, I've got to say thank you to you.
Thank you
very much for joining us
me.
here for Ghana Tonight. Dennis Apia Labi Ampofo is the National President of the National Union of Ghana Students. Let's move our attention to yet another topical issue which has got to do with ANASA's failed defamation suit against their Central Member of Parliament Kennedy Japan and the matters arising. Tonight, we put our focus on what the impact of the court's decision will be on journalism. Yao Bwedwa Yebuafo is the chairman of the National Media Commission and he joins us live on phone. I'm sure you've been following the outcome of the defamation case against Kennedy Japan by ANAS, but the focus for this evening's conversation is how that will affect journalism practice. To begin with, from where you sit, help us appreciate what the law is on investigative journalism.
No, there's no law about investigative journalism. Investigative journalism is not part of journalism. And so the rules of journalism are the same. The point is that the law does not determine how the journalist operates, except when the journalist goes against some basic rules, such as defamation, such as contempt of court, such as invasion of privacy, and such as breaking copyright. And so, I mean, they are the same for whatever genre of journalism that you are practicing. And so investigative journalism doesn't have different rules from other forms of journalism.
Now, is it same for what is known as undercover investigative journalism?
Well, the point is that, you know, there are ethical issues. And there are ethical issues that at the base of it is that all things being equal, the journalist must employ transparent means in gathering all manner of information. And so investigative journalism is also about information gathering. And in fact, one of the cardinal principles there is the fact that the person that you are investigating must be put into the loop. However, everything suggests to us that where there's an overriding public interest, then you may defy the norms and the rules, because there are times that going openly for that information, you may not get it. And so, but getting that information is very, very critical, I mean, in the interest of the public. In that case, whatever means that you can employ to access the information, you can access that information, except that you should not let people know the methods that you use in gathering that information. Because the people get to know, then they will not support it. Whatever means that for as long as you cannot openly secure that information, and that information is, there's an overriding public interest in that information, in that case, you can use undercover means to get that information. But you must understand that the moment that you are exposed, and your undercover things are exposed, you have to pay the price.
Now, should the outcome of this case discourage investigative journalists?
In the first place, the case was not about investigative journalism. It was a defamation matter. And so the decision of the court is not necessarily about investigative journalism. It's about an allegation, a claim by a party that the other party has defamed that person. And the meaning of defamation is to tell an untruth or a lie about somebody with the intention of denigrating that individual in the minds of the thinking public. And so we must take notice of the fact that the matter that was adjudicated was not about investigative journalism. It was about defamation. But in the course of discussing that, I think that some comments have been made about the methods of investigation. And therefore, we need to critically evaluate those things and see, what are the key issues there. And that is where sometimes it is necessary that we get hold of the judgment and see the ratio, the standard of the judge, that what did the judge take into consideration, coming to a certain determination and making a certain pronouncement. There were some, from the story yesterday, I'm not gotten a copy of the judgment yet, but there were very harsh words in some of the places that the judge used to describe the offense. But we need to actually do this and find out that, technically, journalists are enjoined to use transparent means as far as possible in gathering information. And that it is only in a social situation where there's an overriding public interest in the matter, and transparency may not bring about the required information, that somebody has resort to any other unorthodox means in doing it. The fact that it is said that it is unorthodox in itself is an admission that it is not a regular way of approaching the fence. And I'm saying that, for instance, if it is required that you enter the house and there's a door and you don't go through the door and you are trying to go through the window, then make sure that nobody sees you. Because if anybody sees you climbing the window, they will arrest you as a thief. And that is a part of the consequences of investigative journalism, that people who enter into it must prove themselves with the fact that if they resort to undercover means and they are exposed, they may be asked questions relating to that. I don't know whether you are familiar with what happened in the United Kingdom, several years back, where the question of the newspaper, the news of the world, the matter of the news of the world came, and eventually that newspaper was closed down because it had been using subtle means, subterfuge and other means in gathering information. And the moment that the people got to know the methodology that they were using, everybody said that you can't do this, you can't do that. So that is a critical factor.
Now, what are the lessons for investigative journalists in this matter?
Well, definitely the lesson is that as much as possible, we must be transparent in our approach to issues. Where everybody appreciates that there are obstacles that impede us, but the information is in the interest of the public, and therefore we need to do that. We must clothe ourselves with the fact that we may resort to unorthodoxy. But we must also be ready to understand that if we are exposed in the course of applying that unorthodoxy in our investigation, we will pay the price. For instance, if you want to investigate how armed robbers operate, and therefore there's a need for you to join armed robbers, to go to some of their expeditions, to get a better understanding of how they operate. In the course of that, if they go on an operation and they give you a gun and say fire, and you fire as part of the process of investigation, and you fire and you kill somebody and you are caught, you cannot say that you are not a murderer. You have to pay the price. And so there must be that basic understanding that, yes, you are doing the public good, but along the way, there are responsibilities, and you may be asked to pay a price for doing that.
Thank you very much, Yabwedu Ayabwafo is the chairman of the National Media Commission, helping us to end Ghana Tonight. Thanks very much for making a date with us. It's been a very exciting show. I've been sitting in for your regular host, Alfred Ocansey, who definitely will return tomorrow. My name is Pakwisi Asari. Do enjoy the rest of the evening. For more stories, you can log on to our website. It's www.3news.com. Bye-bye.